here as the Diabetic Diva. And some of you may have met her also out there during the lunch and vendor fair with her books. Naomi was diagnosed when she was 12, that's right, yeah. And that changed her life as it did all of ours. But she decided to take a very amusing, funny, positive twist on her journey and dubbed herself Diabetic Diva. And share her story through her books, through her blog, and through these talks she gives. And we're very fortunate to have her come up today, just for the day, just for this talk, and share her story with us. So I don't want to spill any more of her story, so I'd like to invite her up here to share that with us. Thank you.
Hi everyone, can you hear me okay? All right. Thank you to Tamar and Carpdian for having me out here. I'm a first timer at this weekend. I'm super happy to just be able to spend some time with you ladies. I know you're going to hear a lot of stuff this weekend. Some of it may be relevant to you today. Some of it might click a couple of years from now when you go through a different season living with diabetes. So just kind of settle in. I'm going to share my story and the things that I've gone through because I can only truly speak to my experiences. But I can share some of the advice that I've kind of learned over the years, now 15 years later living with type 1. I hate that my mom is not here because she's my biggest supporter with diabetes. She would have been here, but she's actually overseas right now. So I gave her a call and got some tips from her ahead of time just about being a care partner for someone living with type 1. So I'll try to represent the both of us. Does that sound good? Are your arrows going up on your CGMs yet from lunch? Because mine is. We'll hear a couple beeps, right? But we're in this together. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself today. So present day, I live outside of Los Angeles in a little place called Simi Valley. I do work at Medtronic Diabetes. I've been there about 8 years and do their social media. What opened the door for me to go to Medtronic was I'm an author of books about living with diabetes. So I've written 4 books called the Sugar-Free Series. Talk a lot about the emotions involved in what we go through, which I believe is about half of the journey that each of us are on. I love the color pink, if you can't tell. I love shopping, I love shoes, and I'm just kind of a normal girly girl who likes to do things like glamorous spa days and pedicures and spend time with my family and my friends. And I'm telling you these things because I think it's important that you understand that one, I'm focused on present day. I'm focused on the life that I'm leading today because that's the day that I've been given. But I'm also telling you that because I want you to know that I'm more than diabetes. I have a husband now of 2 years. I have a bulldog who's kind of like my baby. His name is Rudy. He might get a brother this summer, another bulldog. And we're on this journey together. We're looking forward to the future, but my past is what's really shaped who I am today. I'm kind of a type A personality. I'm very organized. I think a lot of that comes from the diabetes. It's really shaped kind of the way that I'm wired. And diabetes is one part of my life, right? So we're going to kind of look at this big picture and zoom in on this one aspect of what I live with every day and what you guys have experienced as well. So if we backtrack to my story and why I'm even here today, I was actually born in Bangalore, India, halfway across the world. My parents are Christian missionaries. They work with people with disabilities there and have been there over 30 years. So when I was growing up, I was around people in wheelchairs who couldn't walk. I was around parents who had to carry their children to school. I was around people who had to get assistance from some type of mobility so they could go get a job. And I saw the ailments, I saw the surgeries, I saw the wounds, but I never understood what it was like to live with something like an illness until I was diagnosed myself. So even though I could empathize, even though I could watch them and support them and encourage them, anyone living with any type of disability, it only became real when one shattered my own life. So when I was 12 years old, I went away to a boarding school that was 6 hours away from my parents. I was with my brother and sister. I'm the baby of the family. It was hard for me to leave my parents. We just kind of felt like this was going to be this next chapter in our family's lives. And I remember being alone at this school and being sick. The first 2 weeks of my school experience, I was throwing up. I threw up 8 times one night. I was super thirsty and then running to the bathroom because of the water that I was drinking. and I just didn't feel like myself. Growing up, I was called the Energizer Bunny, and this girl who is 12 years old who lost 25 pounds in 2 weeks, I had no idea who she was. And what I didn't realize was there was this disease that was taking over my body, and I was about to be diagnosed with these couple little words, type 1 diabetes, that would change the rest of my history, or the rest of my future. And so I kept going back and forth to the nurse's office. They kept saying it was the flu, like many of us have experienced. And one night there was a girl there with type 1, and she said we should check Naomi's blood sugar because she's showing the symptoms that I showed when I was first diagnosed. When I heard the word diabetes, I literally thought two things. Orange juice, there's something to do with orange juice and people with diabetes, and old people. That's all I knew at 12 years old about this disease that was in my body. I went into a coma that night because I was 3 hours away from the closest hospital, and I woke up the next day with type 1 diabetes. And my parents were driving in the middle of the night to come see me. It became a very family-oriented disease for us because we weren't together when this diagnosis happened. They were literally driving to come see if I was going to make it. And so when you start to think about the mom driving in the middle of the night to come find her baby in a hospital bed, or you start to think about the 12-year-old who picks up a needle for the first time to put in her thigh or pinky, y'all know that all too well because we're in this together. And I think if you truly take a step back, when you look at this weekend, the best part about this community that's been created is we're in this together. And even though some of you might have to take the insulin, and some of you might have to watch your loved one take the insulin, we all have our own journeys, and we can all support each other. So ever since the beginning, my family was a very big part of my story. We've always been very close, especially growing up overseas as missionary kids. Sometimes me and my siblings, we just felt like all we had was each other. So we're kind of like the three musketeers. We're very close in age, and they've been amazing support systems for me my entire life now, and specifically with my diabetes. But my number one supporter is my mom. My mom was the first one that learned terms like bolus, and she's actually still the only one to this day who can look at a plate and tell me how many carbs are in it. And if you're that mom, I just want to thank you, because literally like the second my mom heard I was getting diagnosed with diabetes, she went to Google, and she said that was her number one resource when she first heard about it. And if you're that same mom who is typing what is diabetes into the Google search, just know that the time that you're taking to educate yourself will help to set your kid up for the rest of their lives. Because of my mom's education in the very beginning, because of her effort to get involved with my disease, that's why I learned quickly, and that's why I was able to not only live with diabetes, but to find ways to accept it and then to embrace it. When I talk about embracing diabetes, it's a hard thing, right? We all kind of hate the disease, right? Does anyone here absolutely love diabetes? There's the lunch crowd, see? Come on. Anyone love diabetes? No, right? We hate it, but we can find ways to love our lives with it. And you've got to find a way to find that half glass full mentality to turn it into a positive. Because I will never see diabetes is a disease that's wonderful, but the things that have come out of my life because of it can be wonderful. So it's a subtle mindset change. What helped me with this mindset was when I was first diagnosed, my family and I kind of sat around this lumpy hospital bed. And we said, how can we support one another through this? Because we were all going through a grieving process. We were all trying to learn these medical terms that we'd never heard of. And my family had to watch this little 12-year-old go through this life-threatening experience. And so we said, well, maybe we can come up with a nickname. We kind of started throwing around different words, and we said, the Diabetic Diva. They said, Naomi, that's going to be your name moving forward. It's going to be your nickname. It's now actually registered to me, so you can't steal it. Sorry. But it became so important because you're going to go through life, and especially in your younger years, where you feel like diabetes is a label in your life, or the term diabetic or person with diabetes. Sometimes you feel like that can be all that you are. I'm going to say that's not true. And I'm going to say that for me, it was a big mindset shift to say, I'm going to choose this label myself, the Diabetic Diva, and apply it to my life moving forward and say, now this is a part of me. It's not all of who I am, but it's going to enable me to live the life that I've always wanted to. And so that really helped me early on. It helped me see the importance of personalizing this disease. If you can tell, my pump skin matches my top. I'm going to confess to you, I have probably 24 pump accessories in my closet because every single day my pump has to match my outfit. Why do I do that? Because at 13, they said I need glasses plus a medical device on my hip. And I said, how am I going to make this part of my own personal style? So I became known as the girl with the pump on her hip that always matched her outfits. And it made me proud to show it off. Because for me, I was personalizing it, I was making it a part of who I am, and now it's just part of the style, right? So it's a small thing, but it made a ginormous difference to me. Medtronic has a pink infusion set, the Mio infusion set. I used to be embarrassed on the beach showing off my infusion set, and then all of a sudden I found out about a pink one. Now I don't care if I'm in a bikini and people see my site, because I love the color and it makes me happy, and so be it. And it's hard because especially when you're growing up, like for me, my teen years were the hardest. They're hard on anyone, right? When you get this life-altering illness placed in your path, it will change things for your future. But you're going to have to find this internal confidence that's going to make you stand up tall and say, this is who I am. And for you moms, if you can find ways to instill that confidence in your girls, to help them know that it makes them more beautiful, it makes them more powerful, it makes them more capable of living out their dreams, that can be one of the best things that you could ever do to truly set us up for success. Today I'm 27 years old and I'm living a successful life because of my parents and because of the way that they helped turn diabetes around for me very early on. Because those inner workings in my mind and my heart will continue to carry me through. I now have a husband by my side who, the first time he saw my pump site, he called it beautiful. And now he deals with my pump beeping in the middle of the night, right? Like, you're beeping. And I say, you're snoring. But he's become a much bigger part of my care team. And I think what you'll see is you're never going to be exactly where you are today for the rest of your life. You're going to go through so many different seasons. Forget diabetes for a second. As a teenager growing up, hormones, body changes, dating for the first time, that's one thing all over here. Then you throw in diabetes into the mix. There's a whole other thing going on. You're going to go through these seasons. You're going to go through these cycles. And for me, that encourages me because when I go through a hard season, I can say this is going to be temporary. Things will get better. Things do get better. Do things become very easy? No. But they become habits. They become part of your everyday life. And if you're like me, it can literally shape the rest of your future. The career I have today, a lot of the friends that I have today, is because of this diagnosis in my life. So if you can take a step back and try to find the upside of this downside situation and find ways to just bring the positivity out and say, what is different in a good way because of my diabetes? That can truly help make the day-to-day grind even just a little bit easier. And then you get that support team around you. The support team will never know exactly what you're going through. But let me say to you girls, you're never going to know what your mom's going through. And it's so important that you find a way to be sensitive to their needs. Because just like you grieve with your diabetes journey, they're going through the same thing in their own way. It might look different, it might feel different, it might sound different, but they have their own sugar-free shoes that they're walking in as well. They might not put the needle in their thigh, but they're watching their baby put it in their thigh. And it's so important, especially as you're growing up, to find ways to think about your mom's experience, or your dad's experience, or your siblings' experience. Because that can kind of, my mom uses the term navel gazing, which is you're just looking down at your belly button. Like this is all you care about, right? It's all about me. It's not all about you.
if you put your head up and look at the people around you and the journeys that they're on because of your diabetes, or just because they have a hard job, or because they're going through loss in their own life, you've got to support them back. And through that experience, you have to communicate. You'll probably hear that word a lot, communicate, all weekend long. We made a rule in my family very early on that we would never communicate when I was high or low. Because when you're high or low, you're not the most pleasant person to be around. And you're not thinking clearly, and you might be a little bit more aggressive or a little bit more groggy. And so I taught them very early on how I feel when I'm high or low. I try to explain it and describe it. And then I taught them the type of support that I need. You can't just assume that your family and your friends are going to know exactly how to handle this disease. You have to give them the tips and the techniques that will help you. My husband knows if I go really low in the middle of the night, which for me is like 55, I not only need some jelly beans, but can you please wake up and get a peanut butter sandwich for me? That used to be my mom when I was 13, 14, 15. And so even though their roles have changed, I still need that support. And I've taken time to teach them and to show them. For example, my cheeks get red when I go high. My husband, when we were dating, I taught him that, and he could walk into a room and say, "Naomi, you're high." And I say, "No, I'm not." And then I check, and I'm like, and you need that in your life. You need those people around you to call you out and to remind you it's not nagging, because it's for your future health. So think that through. Remind yourself of that, especially as you're kind of growing up and going through those stages. Because things are going to be hard with a teen daughter and mom relationship anyways. This makes it so much harder. But if you flip it and actually make your communication strong right now, you will be best friends for the rest of your life. And I can say my mom is one of my very best friends. And I can still text her and say, "Mom, I have a huge meeting this morning. I know you're halfway across the world." She's still in India. I say, "No, I have a huge meeting. I woke up low. Please pray for me. Help me through the day." And she'll send me a note of encouragement. And that small little thing, everyone needs their mommy. I still need that sometimes. So be grateful if you have that relationship, which y'all do. The fact that you're even able to be here together for a whole weekend, blows my mind. And I think it's something you cannot take for granted. So just try to enjoy it, sink in to those seats, and just kind of take it all in. Let it fester. Take your notes so you can really look back on the weekend and figure out what you've learned, because it's going to take some time in your heart and mind. Switching gears a little bit more to the care partner perspective. I'm going to tell you a personal story to me and to my husband. It's not something that I'm vocal about on my own social media channels or in any of my books or blogging, because it's his story to share, but he gave me permission to share it today. 3 years ago, my husband and I got engaged, and a week later, he drove himself to the emergency room. And he was diagnosed with atrial fibrillation. He had 4 very large blood clots in his heart. His lungs had filled up with fluid, and he was almost in renal failure. And we kind of laugh sometimes and say it was because we got engaged, like maybe he freaked out and his body started shutting down. But he was 100% completely healthy before this day. He didn't know what a flu felt like. He didn't know what it was like to go to a doctor to get a shot. He just, normal, typical guy who did his own thing. He loved adventure sports, completely independent. And then he ended up in the ICU for a month and a half. And I went on Valentine's Day with my dad and bought my wedding dress when my husband was in the ICU. And for the first time, I learned what it was like to be a care partner. I thought that I knew about it from talking to my parents about my own diabetes and what they go through. But I truly didn't understand. And so for you girls with diabetes, I just want to make sure that you know the weight on your parents' shoulders is extremely heavy. Sometimes you will be able to help lighten the load by being a little kinder, by thanking them, by trying to be patient. It's not your fault that the weight is on their shoulders. You're going to get through it together. You're going to be able to distribute the weight, sometimes better than others, but it's there. It's not because you had to get sick. It's because they love you, and if you lived with anything else in your life, they would carry the same weight. So I'm saying this because as my husband and I have kind of gone through this journey, he's now had 2 heart surgeries. He has been to the ER more times than can count. I went to the ER on New Year's Eve. I had some champagne in my system. My blood sugar was 400 because I had a cookie the size of my head. But I was there with him, supporting him. And the nurse recognized me. And it broke my heart. Because they didn't recognize my husband, even though he's the patient. They recognized me because I'd been in so frequently with him. And what struck me was I broke down into tears. And I said, oh my gosh, it's so weird. We've been living with this for 3 years, but this moment just hit me where I looked at everything we've gone through. And you're going to experience that on either side of the relationship living with diabetes. There are still times now, 15 years later, that I stop dead in my tracks and say, this is completely hard, and I need to just let these tears out. It is not safe to bottle the man as a care partner or the person living with him. So over time, I've learned how to care for my husband. I'm learning that everybody needs support differently. He does not need the type of care that I need from him, and we've had to communicate about that. He's had to work through his own guilt to wake me up in the middle of the night when he now needs help. But we're getting through it together, and our marriage today is so much stronger because of it. And I think if you really take a step back and look at how strong y'all's relationship will be because of this disease, it doesn't make it better, it doesn't make it easy, but it makes it special. Because you can have this bond where you're relying on someone, not just because you need a little laugh here and there, you need just a little bit of support. It's your life in both of your hands. And that is something you can take with great pleasure. It's something you can take with great responsibility. But you can also take it and say, I've got this life. My life wasn't taken away. I'm here today, and I'm managing my diabetes. I'm thriving with it because of it, because of the way that it shaped me as a person. My husband just got an all clear on his health with his heart on Friday. Thank you. So we're so happy. He still has a weak heart, so he will still stay on medicine. But he lives with a chronic illness now. I live with a chronic illness. When you see pictures of us, if this pump was hidden, you would have no idea that I have insulin supplying my life at this moment. You would have no idea that he has a device that lives in his heart. We look like a completely normal, happy newlywed couple. What it's reminded me of is you will never know what other people are going through. And if I go back to the navel-gazing example, it's not all about you. It's not all about, oh, well, I'm the only one who has something hard to deal with. There are people who you will walk past every single day who need a smile or a word of encouragement because they're going through something life-shattering as well. It's not to discourage you, but it's to encourage you to say, you're just part of the club now where everyone has their something. You might have a little bit more at times. You might get other diagnoses in your life because you have a weak immune system. But we're all still here, right? We're all still making the effort to be the best people that we can be. As I've mentioned, my mom is my biggest support, and one of the things that she wanted me to make sure to tell you guys is it's so important that you take care of yourselves, both mentally and physically, whether you live with diabetes or you're the person caring for someone. For the first 100 months that I lived with diabetes, my mom gained 1 pound every single month. And she talks about how when I would go low in the middle of the night and have a peanut butter sandwich, she would eat one with me. She says it's not because she felt guilty. It's because in that time, in that specific moment, that was the only way she knew to support me. So she knew that I was sitting there eating with someone else. It wasn't just me going through it. And she gained 100 pounds 100 months into my diagnosis. Today, she's actually just a little bit heavier than I am, which is kind of shocking. I need to get a hold on this, right? But she looks amazing and beautiful and strong and powerful. And it's because she recognized that she had to take care of herself for be able to take care of me, to be able to take care of me. And now she's going to have a longer and healthier life because she's back at a normal weight. She's totally healthy, probably healthier than I am. But she had to learn that lesson a very hard way. And she put her own body through a lot. And she doesn't regret that time because she learned a really important lesson. But she wanted me to be able to share that with y'all today because whether it's visible or not, you might not be taking care of your mental health in the best way possible. And it's so important that you do so. So that has encouraged me to watch her health journey, to see how she's lost the weight and gotten stronger and put in the effort. And I know the effort is hard. It doesn't matter whether you're living with diabetes or you're going to the gym trying to get healthy. It's still there. But you've got to find ways to stay motivated on the journey. You have to find ways to stay light and to be positive. And if you're a teenager, you have to be a freaking teenager. You have to go on a date. You have to go watch a movie. You have to go to Starbucks or get a cone of ice cream. Because if you deprive yourself of those life experiences, you're going to get to be like me where you're sitting in a cubicle and saying, why did I miss out on the time that I had to really enjoy my life as a youngin'? The hardest part about being a teen with diabetes, and I can say confidently I know what it's like because I was diagnosed at 12, right? So I literally entered the teen years and have successfully gotten through them. I'm so happy they're behind me. You will be there one day too. But I'm passionate about the teen years because what I learned was diabetes created this part of me that was very mature. It made me grow up so fast when I was in that hospital bed and I had to learn how to do my first insulin injection. And it made me grow up to know that I'd have to be responsible enough at a sleepover to be able to feel my own symptoms to wake myself up. To then try to be a normal teen and have all that stuff going on in your head and your heart, it can be hard. And you need to remind yourself to stay present and to just enjoy that time that you have. There will be times that diabetes keeps you in where you can't just go out and have fun with your friends that day. But I promise another day will come that you can go out and have fun. So you've got to find that balance of taking care of yourself, not pushing yourself too hard, but then also making sure that you're still enjoying your life experiences. When I talk about trying to turn things around for the better, it was shortly after I was diagnosed, probably a year in, I said, I want to really take advantage of this life that I've been given. I'm going to make a list of the things that I want to do before I die. And it wasn't a morbid sense of it, like I didn't think I was going to die right away, but I had this new lease on life coming out of a coma. So now I think I have like 134 things on my list. Things like bungee jumping, which was terrifying and I would not recommend it. It was awful. It was like so awful. But I did it, right? Or things like really weird things, like I want to have a closet one day where my hangers match the clothes that hang on them. So if it's a pink hanger, it has a pink shirt on it. It's weird, I know, and I haven't done it yet. One of these days I'll get around to it. So some of them are kind of silly too. But it helped me stay in the perspective of life is short. And with diabetes, I've always said life is short, but you can make it sweet. And sometimes you have to be very intentional about it. You have to live in that present moment. You have to make plans to almost be independent and free. But it can make you stronger. It can make your life more memorable. And you can then have these pictures or videos that will last forever. So I want you to start kind of thinking through what are the ways that you can be intentional to not only accept your life with diabetes, but to embrace it. Is it things like making a list of things you want to accomplish? Is it things like maybe you just have a list of things that make you happy? What makes you happy when skies are gray? What are those things that you can do or pick up or lean on when you're in kind of one of those high moments? And then how can you be intentional? How can you take the time to stay focused on your emotional and mental health? I will say 15 years later now, I'm not an expert in diabetes. There's still days where I'm like, I feel like I was diagnosed yesterday. Like, did I totally forget how to carb count, right? Like, you have those times. Maybe you'll have one of those this weekend, but you've got people around you. But there's also times where I say, I got this. I can do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to find ways to continue this race. I like to talk to people about how, diabetes isn't just a sprint. Although there are moments where you're sprinting through this journey, it is truly a marathon. Like, how can you buckle in and figure out a way to do this for the rest of your life or until a cure is found? As I mentioned, I've lived with diabetes for 15 years now, and I take a moment every year. We celebrate our Diaversaries, right? Haley, you just had your third. Congrats. And I kind of take a moment. September 2nd, every single year, my family and I, we celebrate, we do something fun. I eat a cupcake, or I go out to dinner, or go bungee jumping, whatever it is. And I take times to celebrate. And there was a therapist that I saw for a little while who said it was morbid that I was celebrating a disease. And he actually thought it was like a big issue, which I thought was kind of funny. But for me, it was important because it was my way of saying, I'm not celebrating diabetes, I'm celebrating life. And I'm celebrating all the things that have happened in the last year. And I'm going to look back on the effort I've put in. I'm going to look back on all of the needle pokes and the symptoms, highs and the lows, and I'm going to pat myself on the back because I know I need it to continue the next year, and I know I deserve it. But when I hit my 15 year, I was like all excited, and we did a big trip and big old ordeal. And then I came back home, and I went into what we call diabetes burnout, which I know y'all are going to talk about this weekend. And all of a sudden, everything just felt hard. My burnout times never means I don't pick up the Lancet. I still do. I've never rebelled and not actually treated myself because I feel like crap when I do that. But mentally, it was so hard to pick up the Lancet, and I was just worn out. And it took 2 months and a bad A1C to look in my endo in the eye and to cry in her office and say, I got to a point where I felt like I couldn't do this anymore. And yeah, I've done 15 years, but is this really a lifelong thing? Totally defeated. And then I picked my head up. And I said, I have done 15 years. I could do 15 more or 20 more, 30, whatever, if I need to, and I'm going to do what I need to do. But what was so important was I needed that time to just feel devastated. And it helped me to move forward. For years, I bottled things up. That's why I started writing my first book, because I literally had all this stuff going on inside of me, and I had no idea what to do with them. I wasn't comfortable sharing with people because, well, they don't know what I'm going through, right? I bottled it up. I'd smile real big every time someone asked how I was doing. I might have cried myself to sleep last night and you didn't see that, so I'm just going to put on a happy face and let you know that I'm okay. So I found ways over time to just release it, to show that I'm not doing okay, because I found that that allows you to heal faster. That was very hard for me to do because I'm such an optimist and everything has to be awesome all the time. But it's not that way, right? And so it's finding ways to not swing from one extreme to another, because I've done that as well, where I'm if you literally asked how I was doing in the hallway, I'd say, I'm crappy. I was up crying last night because I don't like my diabetes. Or, oh, I'm high this morning and I'm all groggy because of it. Where I just shared with everyone, whether you wanted to know or not. And so I'm kind of finding this pattern, right? Either I'm bottling up or I'm just telling you everything. And I had to find this happy medium. At different stages in my life, that happy medium meant different things. And I found a way to surround myself with people who I knew I could vent to in that moment and then keep moving forward. I have a friend with diabetes who lives in New York. We met online in the diabetes online community. And literally, we will just vent to each other on text message because we know that's going to help us get through the day. And then I don't feel like I need to complain anymore, but I had to get that out. So it's going to be important for both you as moms and you as the daughters to find that happy medium and to not swing from one extreme to another. But in those moments when you do, get a grip on it, find ways to keep moving forward, and don't beat yourself up. By trying to find that balance of being positive and still kind of pushing forward and feeling exhausted sometimes, it'll be hard. It'll be harder at different stages in your life. When I started caring for my husband, he was still independent, did his own thing. But I literally, there was one night where I found out he was going to be rushed to the ER in an ambulance. What did I do? I ordered a milkshake. And I sat there and I said, I can't believe I just ordered a milkshake. Of course people with diabetes can have milkshakes, but I made a direct correlation that that was emotional eating. And I was doing that because I just wanted to feel better. But what happened? I went high and I didn't feel better. And that process lasted 3 months. This year, 3 months. I just signed up with a personal trainer. I'm seeing her, I know. Let me tell you, a good girl. I'm waking up, I'm going to 2 training sessions a week at 6:15 in the morning. It's awful, but wonderful. And I knew at this point in my life, that's what I need to get back on track. Because I have someone who I'm accountable to, and I'm gonna be there twice a week, whether my husband can make it or not, I'm gonna be there. That in turn has made me stronger to support him. And I think you all will see that in different phases of life. Sometimes the mom will be the stronger one. Sometimes it's going to be the daughter. You might be supporting your mom in different phases. And that's not only okay, that's a blessing that you're going to be able to do that, because you're going to have this tight-knit relationship in ways that you wouldn't have without the diabetes. So I just want to encourage you. I want to let y'all know, like, everything's going to be okay. Whether it doesn't feel okay or it does feel okay for you today in this moment in time, you're going to have those moments where you can look back and say, I'm a champion because of this disease. I'm able to not only multitask with a math test and a crazy breakup, but I'm also managing my health. And by doing that, you're going to be able to see that it's going to shape you into a strong and a beautiful and vibrant woman, because you're going to have these things that diabetes is going to teach you. You're going to have lessons in life that show you that life is short and that you have to be responsible and you have to be on top of things. You will likely be someone, when you get into the workplace, who's able to do that presentation on time because of what diabetes has taught you. And so be grateful about that and just kind of find those moments to step back and say, I'm going to be okay. When you can't say that yourself, you've got to look over to your mom or just someone around you and say, how can I do this? How can I keep going? And then they'll help you move forward. But to be able to do that means you need to speak up. And that can be the hardest thing sometimes. Because sometimes I don't know what to say. I just feel like crap and I hate this every single day. I can't even get out of bed. When I go to work some days, I'm grabbing onto the railing of the stairs to get to the top. But you know what happens? On the days when I can now spring up the stairs, I look back and say, oh my gosh, I wasn't able to do that a couple weeks ago. Man, do I feel great. Man, this is going to be a good day. I'm going to be able to do this. And then when those times come again where I'm grabbing onto the railing a little bit more, I look back on the times when I was springing up the stairs. And I say, that day's going to come again. That's going to be the same thing with you, Mom, especially in the workplace. Especially if you're up for lows in the middle of the night or blood checks, or you got that high number on your daughter's CGM in the morning. Some days are going to be harder for you than others because you're going to try to live that same experience that she's going through, but you've got to find ways to remind yourself that it's going to be okay. And by doing that, that's made my journey a little bit easier. I've now written 4 books about the emotions involved in diabetes. The fact that I found enough words to put on paper for 4 books, oh my gosh, I'm not that emotional of a person, but there is that much that will go on with your health. And you will go through different seasons. I can say today at 27, I've gone through my diabetes burnout. That just happened a couple months ago. I'm stronger and better than ever. And I finally feel like I'm turning this corner in my health, at least in this season where I can do this. But I had to come out of a very long, hard season to be able to say that to you today. And I'm being transparent because I think that it's important that you know, anyone who's smiling, there might be something going on behind those eyes. eyes or behind that smile. When I was a teenager, I found ways to hide it. And I went through this phase where I had a makeup bag that I would carry with me. And the days where I had the most makeup on was actually the day that I felt awful. And even though some people do it opposite, where like they walk in with bags under their eyes like this, that's fine, do what you gotta do. I was the opposite, where if I just look stunning that day, it's because I feel awful. And that was my way of masking my disease to the world and to fake it till I make it, but that also became a little unhealthy. Now, I wear less makeup. And there are some days where I actually go out without any makeup, which is shocking to me. But whatever, right? I'm happy doing it in my own skin, right? You gotta get to that place. And you gotta find those little ticks about you, those things that make you a perfectionist, that may or may not be healthy, that may be more extreme and sometimes than others, and you gotta get a grip on it. Because otherwise you're gonna look back years later and you're gonna look at that makeup bag and say, why did I hide for so long? Now I have a makeup bag in my purse, but I'm using it as my glucometer case. It's super cute, it's new, I just got it a couple weeks ago. And it's literally a makeup bag that I'm using as my glucometer case. And that goes back to the whole positive thinking of turning a negative into a positive. But also, you gotta personalize this disease because it's with you for the ride, right? It's gonna be a part of you, a part of your family. It's going to turn the drinks in your fridge into diet sodas instead of regular sodas. It's gonna turn you into a family that's more aware of an insulin pump spotted at the beach. My husband can literally say, oh my gosh, there's someone with a pump on their hip. And it's because he spots the infusion set from like a mile away, which is awesome, right? To be able to have those people around you that can just pick up on it. And you kind of have this like sixth sense about you, right? But sometimes it's like a cell phone and I get all excited and then I'm like, oh, they don't have diabetes, right? So just kind of think about these things, try to laugh. Try to just live your life, live in the moment, and just step back and say, there's going to be hard times, but there is always sunshine after the storm. And there are going to just be those moments where things are hard, but if you have a little bit of a sense of humor, if you and your family can just make jokes about your life with diabetes, if you can just find those comical things about test strips, all around the house, all around everyone's cars, all on everyone's shoes, right? Like, uh-oh, not just mine. My husband's shoes, he's got a little test strip stuck on him. Try to find those moments, because by keeping things light, you're going to be able to deal with the hard things, right? And you just got to really try to make that a habit, and as you make it a habit like anything, it's going to become a part of who you are. Does anyone have any questions so far? How are we feeling? Are y'all tracking with me? You kind of, okay, any questions? This after lunch crowd is a tough one. No questions at all? Anything y'all are dealing with right now or struggling with, or? Yeah.
So when you went to boarding school, just about your story, when you were in boarding school, did that happen because your parents were going abroad again and this time you guys weren't going to go? Or
No, so it's a good question. We were in Bangalore, India in the south. That's actually where my parents still are today. Especially back then, we tried a lot of different schools, both Indian and international, and they just weren't working for us at that point in our family's lives. So we heard amazing reviews about this boarding school. It was the first we'd ever been to. And we had some friends who'd sent their kids up there, and it's not a rare thing, internationally, boarding school experience. But literally, like the first 2 weeks I was there was when I got diagnosed. Like that's when I lost all the weight and had the symptoms. So it was a brand new experience for all of us.
So it was the boarding school in India?
In India, yeah. And that was 6 hours away from our house there, because my parents had to stay there and do their
And
work.
then did you stay at the school afterwards?
No, I actually came home. So in India, especially back then, they kept me in the hospital for 2 weeks. So I kind of learned everything while I was there. So I was in the hospital. I came back home and I was allowed to do it's like a homeschool version of what they were learning at boarding school. And I stayed home with my parents for that next year. And my brother and sister had to go back to their school, that next week, and they had to deal with it. And It was hard because we were apart as a family, but we were able to get through it. And it allowed me to be really close with my parents in the beginning because we kind of had that special bond where they had to learn things as fast as I was. And the first night that I went low, in the middle of the night, like both my mom and I were so freaked out. We were in India, and we had these Pop-Tarts in the cabinet. And Pop-Tarts, like especially in India back then, it was like, Pop-Tarts aren't the greatest thing, but I was like really excited. And I ate 2 whole Pop-Tarts because I was like so freaked out by the symptom. I'm like, what's going on? Am I dying? I wasn't. And I was so high that next morning, but it was so weird because here I was in this international country. America was still a little bit of home to me. I lived in Texas for a long time, which is where my accent's from. But this like treat of a Pop-Tart, of an American Pop-Tart, it was not good. So now I don't ever eat Pop-Tarts because it's like a bad memory. But so my parents are actually still there, and then my sister and her husband live there as well. And then they kind of go back and forth quite a bit. I go there every couple of years, so. Any other questions? Then I can change the topic and get back in on time. Yeah?
Little odd question.
That's fine.
Do you have any concerns about sending a daughter to India by herself with diabetes, or it's just preparation?
So
Specifically India.
Specifically India. So I will say, if you're prepared, you can travel anywhere in the world. India, the only hard part about being there is the food, and like there's so much rice, there's so much bread, and there's not a lot of nutrition facts on the foods. It's just not there as a society yet. Or it'll do things like it says the carbs for 100 grams of that food, and the package is only 30 grams, which is weird. So sometimes you gotta like really figure out the math. But I will say India has so many people with diabetes. A lot of it is type 2. There are more and more like moms and youngins with type 1 who are there and kind of growing up there. You can totally do it. It just takes, I think it's hard with the food. How long would she be going for, do you know? Or is this hypothetical? Oh, that's totally doable, yeah. The
It's
big
interesting
thing,
because the school actually, we had a fellow student,
Yeah.
they actually didn't want her to go to India.
okay,
She was to go to China.
to China.
So I
Okay.
wasn't sure if there was something specific.
I wouldn't say so, at least from my experience. I think being able to travel worldwide is a gift that my parents gave me. We never let my diabetes stop me from doing things like that. The time change can be hard on the body, especially if it's like India. The trip is, it can be like 24 hours, that's 11 and a half hours, so you're kind of switching from morning to night. But over time, you can get used to it, and you just talk to your Indo about the time change, about traveling with extra supplies, and you're set up for success. Yeah. How are we on time tomorrow?
So we're supposed to end now, but it's a 15-minute break,
Okay.
so.
Okay, that's fine. Does anyone have any other questions? I will say I'm going to sit in there with my books for a little while longer. I can sign books for you guys if you want to. You can grab my business card. I blog every week. I'm out there in the community with both my role at Medtronic as well as just kind of for fun because I need support too. But I hope y'all enjoyed my talk. Thank you. So I'll be kind of hanging out over there. Yeah.
I have one question.
Yeah.
Can you just briefly describe, like, what's the life lesson of each of your books? Like, what's